Okay, so here we are in King David. This is second half of turn 2. Ran a harvest phase. You can see kind of where the money has ended up. Everybody's got a decent amount of food now, except really Tyre. They may be in some trouble there. But Moab's certainly cranking it out. They're looking forward to the build phase. They're going to be able to put up a fairly decent sized army here. Gotta add the last couple. And we don't have another build phase, just another action and a resource. We got 3 actions in a row, basically, with the build phase in between. Okay, and then did the event phase. Everybody was handed out events. And again, Aramea played an alliance. And between them, Tyre and Judah were able to prevent it from bringing Amath into play. Alright, that's about it. Okay, in this action phase, Aramea and Tyre, a little bit of a fight. Went to Tyre's advantage through, slightly superior forces. Really, the Arameans placed a roadblock in the way, and it wasn't sufficient to do enough damage to make up for what it took in losses. And but what's really kind of impressive, a huge Bedouin incursion. Now that one lasts 4 turns instead of 3. I don't know how you're supposed to remember these. I mean, do you put the Bedouin counter with them so that you can remember how many action phases it's taken and then mark them somewhere? Do you use little slips of paper? I don't know. But anyway, there's a lot of them there. 13 of them. That's nearly the entire force. And they've managed to take these territories. I'm saying they're Tyrian territories because I don't know what happens to them. There's no way to mark them as some sort of neutral with what's in the game, which would have felt more correct. But anyway, even took the city. And it looks like Ammon may actually fall, which would actually turn everything strongly in Tyre's advantage. If that could just happen, if those Ammonite troops just disappeared, Aramea would be in a lot of trouble because they haven't gotten a build phase. But there is a build phase coming up, and they'll be able to put their own army in place. And chances are Ammon's not going to fall before the Arameans can get something down there, I think. I don't know. Hard to tell. There's a lot of Bedouins. And the next action phase, they move to here, next one to here, and it's over. So I don't know. Edom. Moab's been pretty much driven out. I think they've made the decision to turn against Judah and give up on their expedition on Edom. They kind of an automatic piece as far as I can tell. The other option, of course, is Edom just kind of grows and sits there. But if they pull out, which I think they will at the end of this phase, the control markers and everything disappear, and Edom becomes fully neutral. I'm not sure that happens with this city here. I don't know. But Moab doesn't feel like they've got a good shot right now. We'll see how they feel in a moment. Alright. On the bottom half, there's a lot less going on, a lot less troops. The Philistines have nothing. Judah ended up taking the last city, swapping David out so that he can lead a new force forward. We have nothing of size. We just have a leader there for the doubled movement. And the Moabs are actually going to continue their war against Edom. Not sure how wise that is, especially given this situation. Let me give them another die roll chance to back out. Yeah, they're giving it up. Let's just pull them back. They're Edom can go retake this city, and then it will be neutral essentially. So, but that's yeah, they're committing themselves to a war against Judah. And next diplomacy phase, they may actually, depending on how things lie, make an alliance with the Philistines, a formal alliance. Those can be broken at any time, but once you break it, you can never ally with that player again. Alright. Okay, so now the build phase is over, and there was a whole lot of shaking going on because for every build aspect. You have to throw the pieces you want in the cup, shuffle them up, and grab what you want to buy. And of course you have to pay double if it's a two-step unit. Not that that requires more shaking. There was a lot of money available. And we can see Aramea did not spend themselves. Whereas just about everybody else is out of resources, having bought a lot of stuff. In particular, let's take quick looks. Aramea built their stuff here in the south to try to handle the Bedouins because they need the Ammonite support that's all lodged in the north. So now they have to try to clear those Bedouins out. That's a hard situation. The Ammonites are providing nothing. By my interpretation of the rules, this stays flipped over. For Tyre, well, they built everything they could, really. They've only got 4 resources left. A bunch of phalanxes. And again, because of the way I'm handling stacking, I may give them a slight edge there. Now, they can only bring 4 units into combat in any round, but those are pretty tough units that they've got there, and they've got a lot of them. So they may have something of a roadblock in the way of Aramea there. When we come to actually looking at Edom, who's also under their control, well, they got a little bit of growth and thought, hey, Moab's leaving us alone. Not so fast, and we'll get to them in a moment. When we take a look at the Philistines, again, built everything they can. Not quite, actually. They have a significant amount of backup food, something Tyre doesn't have. They wanted to hold on to that because they think they can hold out, especially if Moab throws their weight in against Judah. They think they can hold out for a while. They've got a big old stack of almost all, I think it is all, chariots that they just built. And their plan? Well, to regain the coastlands. Judah's trying to thwart that by building their own big stack. A lot of phalanxes, but some infantry to boot, and another stack here. Basically with a dual-pronged plan. One way up to the coastal, one way along this side. And they still do have some troops in the coastal area. Basically, they've got 3 stacks, one huge one to be led by David. They think David's stack is a match for this, and it really almost isn't because, well, the question is it or isn't it? Because it's about the same size. It's less valuable troops. Half of its phalanxes, which are as good as the chariots anywhere. The other half, though, is infantry. But David will get to use 7 counters, whereas the Philistines only get to use 1. 4. On from there, we hit Moab, who is definitely preparing for a war with Judah. But they decided, I think we can pursue the war with Edom as well. We've got some foothold there. We don't want to lose that. Let's push in, and maybe we can actually divert troops and really put pressure on Judah here. See what we can kind of get out of this. I think they're looking too big. If another build phase comes up before, say, they get a harvest, they could be in a lot of trouble here because they've got a big army. But like some other people, they spent most of their money, and they actually do have some reserve food there. Basically, once they built the army they wanted to send after Judah, they said, wow, I got enough to throw a militia army into Edom again. All right, well, we're into the action phase then. Well, some of the most exciting stuff happened over here, where the Arameans launched an attack against Tyre, were defeated, in part due to a bribe to some of their troops, which very explicitly puts it, the way that's worded is so much different from, say, the way the troop revolt works. The troop revolt, I can't tell who it's supposed to be, but the bribe is so explicit that it goes over to the person who gave the bribe. Makes me think the troop revolt probably should be they just leave the combat. I like what it represents better the way I'm playing it, because it's almost an argument for these civil wars and everything by doing it that way. Certainly Judah, for whom we have more detailed information, was often fighting itself, and sometimes with the alliance of one side or another, like aiding the rebels. So I kind of want to keep playing that way. I think it's a better game with that, closer to the storyline I wanted to see. But I think the rules very clearly come down on the other side. All right, anyway, the Tyrians came back, smacked the leader and destroyed the rest of his force. And basically the entire Ammonite army has been destroyed. Now that's fine, because Ammon may be falling here. It may no longer be a power very shortly. And there's no question that Aramea can retake it, unless, of course, the Moabs jump in or something. But that doesn't restore it. It would still not exist anymore. And then over on Edom, well, they're pulling back and kind of grabbing some land or whatever. It really doesn't much matter, but they are opening the way in case all the Moabs want to do is get a short route into Judah from that direction. All right, well, on to the Philistines. Well, the Philistines were a little overambitious. They split their forces and grabbed both Jaffa and Baalath. David swept together, grabbed his two groups, actually had more forces than he could command, and really just wiped out the Philistine 4 cav that they put in the front. Now, there were a couple extra hit points. So essentially, whatever battle happens next turn, which probably will be the same, wiping out another Philistine chariot army, would have happened this turn instead. It's just extra dice, extra units in the front, bigger units in terms of, well, not bigger in terms of the chariots versus phalanxes, but big units that are hard to knock out. They definitely did a lot of damage really quickly and then took the city back very easily because the fortifications are gone. You also see they're pushing up in the north, planning on grabbing a lot of this no man's land territory that was claimed by the Philistines. The Moabs have to move against them, but boy, do they feel like they're going to lose here. So last action phase, I noticed something that I screwed up with Tyre, and I didn't move their Bedouins forward, which means Ammon could not possibly have fallen in the time that Aramea has to get back to him. I cheated in order to allow them to advance. The possibility of wiping Ammon out seems desirable overall. Now, rather than just allowing this mistake, especially since I'm constantly forgetting about Edom and everything. I'm entering this next action phase, and I look, and Aramea does still have a chance. They're separated by 1. They can't cut through here easily, but they can hit here as well. Now, they have lost. They have lost Ammon. And it will constantly, it will not be able to recover. Likewise, though, they've lost heavily up in the north, and things look very badly for Aramea. Now, Tyre's victory conditions are only 7 cities additional. That's going to be tough for them because they have to fight their way through a lot of ugly terrain up here. But Tyre is going to become as much of a threat in a way as Judah is, if Aramea can't defend itself. Now, they still have a pretty good army and can kind of work better in the plains because they have the chariots. Anyway, on to the actions. And then after the fall of Ammon, it's been completely conquered. All of the Ammonites have already been knocked out of the game. The Bedouins have covered this, though. We see Tyre pushing forward and up towards Sidon. We also saw Edom grabbing this location. Now, after that, Judah pushed forward, grabbed Jaffa, put some troops on the Jordan border, but they're in danger. They've got these Moab troops coming forward, and in a sense, that may be the biggest risk. David may have to divide his army or something. It's just he doesn't have enough stuff covering his borders. And he's got to make sure he doesn't lose Judah itself entirely, because if he loses all the cities there, he can't build troops. So this was kind of a known factor that he's not going to have the full amount of troops to face maybe the Philistines that he wants. And he's got to move quickly down into Judah. All right. I don't think he had a counter to help him with any of that. Recruit prisoners, which he failed to use in his last battle. Egyptian raids. He could use Egyptian raids, but those would be against Edom. Moab's not down there yet, so that's not terribly helpful to him. All right. I guess that's the end of the action phase. We have a resource phase. That's just calculating. I'll come back after that, show you a picture of how much money everybody's got. Right now the resources are already the rich resource on the track. Food is still in shortage. Okay, and that's the last resource phase. The end of the turn. I should put a die or something to remind me. Here's where our points are. Aramea is still pulling in so much wealth. And they do have a pretty decent sized army left. The Bedouins are going to go away at the end of their next action. They've done their damage. The Arameans have to come back and try to capture Ammon. And you might see Moab's heading there. The Moabs have done quite well, increasing their resources actually above the Philistines. They're such a weak power to begin with that they're kind of, even though they've gained a lot, it's not worth much. Judah's being cut back a little bit by the attacks inside them. The Philistines obviously not doing terribly well. You can see they're in the last place. Tyre, their resurgence, somewhat surprising. I don't know what happened in that battle. I don't know if I somehow cheated, which is of course always possible, or miscalculated, or whatever you want to say, or if they got a very lucky roll. It's just very disturbing. They had bigger dice, but they were outnumbered on the field, and they still got, most of the Aramean units were already damaged, so they collapsed more quickly. Anyway, we've got a set of Tyrian units that aren't in great shape up at the forefront, and they probably can't handle being counterattacked. But Aramea doesn't really want to risk things too much right now. They want to get their south under control before engaging too much head-on. But if they start losing this territory, especially, this is very resource-rich. There's 2 resources per space there, so that's going to be kind of painful. Anyway, only 2 vids for this turn, so up it goes.